All right, so moving on to section 3 of chapter 14. Okay, so we have our right triangle trig ratios. So this is going to be kind of a basic review on these trig ratios, which you've probably seen in geometry, Algebra 1, different things like that. So these trig ratios shouldn't be anything new. They should be fairly known by now. So SOHCAHTOA, which is the abbreviation for your sine, cosine, tangent, which helps you identify parts of finding the angle based on just the sides of a right triangle. So this whole section is if we have a right triangle. The next sections are going to go over if we don't have a right angle in our triangle. So SOHCAHTOA, or the abbreviation is some old hippie caught another hippie tripping on acid, would be an abbreviation for this. For you to remember it. So sine is the opposite leg divided by the hypotenuse. The cosine is the adjacent leg over the hypotenuse. And the tangent is the opposite over the adjacent. So if we have this as our right angle, right triangle, this right here is going to be your hypotenuse. So the hypotenuse is always that longest side. Okay. If we want to find this angle right here, okay, if we want to find that angle down there where I've written theta, the opposite is going to be the one that does not touch it. So the side that doesn't touch that angle is your opposite side. And then the one that does touch it is your adjacent side. So if I were to change it, hypotenuse, if I wanted to find that angle, okay, that means that this is now my opposite side, and this is now my adjacent side. So you see, based on the angle, the opposite and the adjacents can switch depending on which angle you're trying to find. Okay, so your opposite adjacent, opposite hypotenuse for sine, adjacent hypotenuse for cosine, opposite adjacent for tangent, which again is SOHCAHTOA. Some old hippie caught another hippie tripping on acid would be a way to help you remember that. Okay. So let's say we have this function, and what I want you to do is I want you to find the missing sides of this. Okay, so take a second, find the missing sides of this triangle. Right, so if I wanted to find this side right here, what I would end up doing is I'd take I would use sine, cosine, or tangent. I would end up probably using cosine because it's the adjacent side to the 50. So it's the adjacent side of the 50, and so this is A, and this is B. So if I wanted to find, so let's switch it up, let's find A. So if I want to find A, it would be the sine of 50, which is the opposite over the hypotenuse. So the opposite over the hypotenuse, so I'd go A over 72, because 72 is the hypotenuse, and then I'd use my calculator. So you type in, make sure you're in degrees. If you're unsure, you go sine 90, and you should get 1. If you don't get 1, that means you're in radians, so you go to mode, switch it back into degrees. And then once you know you're in degrees, you go sine of 50, you type out whatever that decimal is, and then you go and you multiply it by 75 basically. So sine of 50, sine of 50 is approximately 0.766. Okay, this is 0.766. So 0.766 is equal to A over 72. And then we'd end up going through and we'd solve it for that number. Okay, so we'd end up with A would be about 55, and B would end up being about 46 point something. And when you solve them and you find what the numbers are, you can check by using the Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus B squared should equal C squared. Okay. All right, so now let's say we have this set up. And so take a second and find which trig function would you use to find B. So in this situation, if I wanted to find B, I would probably use my tangent function. Okay. If I wanted to find C, which trig function would I want to use based on the information given? I'd want to use sine because I have the opposite side. So I'd use tangent and sine for both of these. and I'd go through. So if I wanted to find c, which is my hypotenuse, I'd end up with sine 33 is equal to the opposite side 15 divided by the hypotenuse, c. And then I'd go through and I'd solve it. For it, you type in sine 33, and you'd end up with 0.5446. So 0.5446 is equal to 15 divided by c. And then you'd go through and you'd solve it. Okay. And if it was tangent, you'd do the same thing. You'd end up with tangent 33 of 15 over b, because the opposite over the adjacent. Okay. And then you go through and you solve for that missing variable. Okay. And that's how you find your missing sides.